The divorce papers slipped from his hand before he even realized he had let them go. They fluttered to the polished wooden floor like broken promises, and for a moment, the only sound in the quiet lawyer's office was the soft rustle of paper settling. He wasn't staring at her face. He wasn't staring at the pen she had just used to sign away their marriage. He was staring at the undeniable curve beneath her pale blue dress, round, full, impossible to ignore. 7 months. 7 months pregnant. And he had known nothing. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of love to surprise us when we least expect it, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who still believes in hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why the human heart is stronger than pride. He felt the air leave his lungs as though someone had punched him. The room suddenly seemed too small, the walls pressing inward. Just 3 months ago, she had walked out of their apartment with a suitcase and eyes too tired to cry anymore. 3 months ago, she had said she couldn't do this, couldn't live with the constant silence, the arguments that felt like cold wars, the disappointment that lingered between them like fog. He had told himself she was dramatic. He had told himself she would come back once she realized marriage wasn't supposed to feel like a fairy tale every day. But she hadn't come back. Instead, she had sent papers. He had signed them out of anger more than acceptance, convincing himself that if she wanted to leave, he would make it easy. Pride had been louder than pain. He had avoided mutual friends, deleted pictures from his phone, and thrown himself into late-night work shifts so he wouldn't have to think about the empty side of the bed. And now she stood in front of him carrying a child that was undeniably his. He searched her face for explanation, for accusation, for something. But what he saw was exhaustion layered over quiet strength. She looked different, not just physically, but emotionally. Softer in some places, harder in others. There was a protective stillness about her, like someone who had learned to stand alone. His mind raced back 7 months. 7 months ago, they had still been trying. Trying to fix things. Trying to reconnect. Trying to remember why they had fallen in love in the first place. There had been one night, a rare night, when the tension dissolved. They had cooked dinner together, laughed at an old inside joke, and held each other as if nothing had ever been broken. He remembered thinking maybe this was the beginning of healing. He had no idea it had been the beginning of a life. The realization hit him in waves, shock first, then confusion, then something deeper and more terrifying, regret. He remembered the cruel words he had thrown at her during their worst arguments. He remembered accusing her of not caring enough, of being distant, of being the reason everything was falling apart. He remembered storming out instead of listening. He remembered choosing ego over empathy. And all the while, she had been carrying his child. She hadn't told him. That fact stabbed at him almost as sharply as the surprise itself. Why hadn't she told him? Had she planned to raise the baby alone? Had she believed he wouldn't care? Or worse, had she believed he would resent the child the way he had resented their failing marriage? He suddenly saw their past through a different lens. The mornings she had felt sick. The times she had seemed unusually tired. He had assumed it was stress. He had been too absorbed in his own frustration to notice the signs. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly, asking if they needed a moment. He didn't hear the rest. His world had narrowed to the woman he once promised forever and the life growing inside her. When they stepped outside into the late afternoon light, the city noise felt distant and unreal. Cars moved. People hurried by. Life continued as if nothing monumental had just happened. He walked beside her in silence, noticing how carefully she moved, how instinctively her hand rested on her stomach. That simple gesture broke something open inside him. He remembered the night they painted the second bedroom in their apartment, joking that one day it might become a nursery. Back then, the idea of a child had felt like a distant dream, something for later, when they were more stable, more secure, more ready. But life had its own timing. She finally spoke, her voice steady but fragile at the edges. She told him she had found out 2 weeks after she left. She told him she had been terrified. Not because of the baby, but because of the reality that she would have to navigate motherhood alone. She said she had considered telling him many times, her phone in her hand, his contact open on the screen. But every memory of their last fight stopped her. She had believed he deserved peace, even if it meant she carried the weight alone. The words crushed him. Peace. There had been no peace. Only emptiness. He realized then that their marriage hadn't collapsed because love was gone. It had collapsed because neither of them had known how to hold on to it when things became difficult. They had mistaken hardship for incompatibility. They had allowed pride to speak louder than vulnerability. But now there was a child. The days that followed were heavy with uncertainty. Legally, the divorce could still be finalized. Emotionally, nothing felt simple anymore. He offered to attend doctor appointments. At first, she hesitated, unsure whether his sudden involvement was guilt-driven or genuine. But he persisted, not with grand gestures but with consistency. He showed up. He waited in clinic hallways. He listened to the rhythmic heartbeat echo through sterile rooms, a sound that silenced every argument they had ever had. Hearing that heartbeat for the first time was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't just a curve beneath fabric. It was real, a tiny, stubborn life pushing forward regardless of adult mistakes. He began to see how alone she must have felt. Shopping for baby clothes by herself. Reading parenting articles at night without someone to share the anxiety. Feeling the first kick and having no one beside her to witness it. The thought filled him with shame. But shame, he realized, could either paralyze him or transform him. He chose the latter. He asked questions. He admitted his faults without defending them. He acknowledged the ways he had shut down emotionally when she needed reassurance. For the first time in their relationship, he stopped trying to win and started trying to understand. She didn't forgive him immediately. Trust, once fractured, rebuilds slowly. There were days she pulled back, reminding him gently that a baby did not automatically fix what was broken. She was right. Parenthood was not a bandage for unresolved wounds. So they did the hard work. They attended counseling, not to save a marriage that might already be over, but to learn how to co-parent with respect. In those sessions, truth surfaced. He admitted that he had felt inadequate, overwhelmed by expectations he didn't know how to meet. She confessed that she had interpreted his silence as indifference, when in reality it was fear. Layer by layer, misunderstandings unraveled. The more he prepared for fatherhood, the more he recognized how much he still loved her, not with the reckless intensity of early romance but with something steadier and deeper. Love shaped by humility. One evening, as they assembled a crib in her small apartment, he noticed how different the space felt from the home they once shared. It was simpler, cozier, filled with small signs of resilience. She had built a life for herself in the midst of heartbreak. He realized that whether or not they remarried, she would be an incredible mother. That certainty filled him with admiration. And then came the night everything changed again. A sudden complication sent them rushing to the hospital. The fear in her eyes mirrored his own. In the stark brightness of the emergency room, all past conflicts dissolved. There was no pride, no history, only urgency. He held her hand as doctors moved quickly around them, and in that moment, he understood what commitment truly meant. Not paperwork, not rings, presence. Hours later, when they were told the baby was stable and she would need careful monitoring but not early delivery, relief washed over him like rain after drought. He leaned his forehead against her hand, overwhelmed by gratitude. It was there, in that hospital room filled with beeping machines and fragile hope, that she finally allowed herself to cry. Not just from fear, but from exhaustion. From carrying so much alone for so long. He whispered that she didn't have to carry it alone anymore. Weeks passed. The divorce papers remained unsigned in a drawer. They didn't rush decisions. They focused on preparing for their child, on rebuilding friendship, on rediscovering laughter. Slowly, cautiously, affection returned, not forced, not dramatic, but natural. The day their daughter was born, the world narrowed once again to a single breathtaking moment. When he held the tiny, wrinkled bundle in his arms, something ancient and powerful awakened inside him. He looked at her and saw not just responsibility, but redemption. He looked at the woman in the hospital bed, exhausted, radiant, and felt a love more grounded than anything he had known before. They did not pretend their past had never happened. Instead, they let it become the foundation for a stronger future. They learned to communicate before resentment grew. They apologized quickly. They listened fully. Months later, on a quiet evening at home, he found the old divorce papers while searching for an insurance document. He held them for a long time, reflecting on how close they had come to losing everything. Then he tore them in half. Not because a baby magically solved their problems, but because they had both chosen growth over ego. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that sometimes life's greatest surprises come wrapped in second chances, please like, share, and comment below. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might need hope today. And before we reach the final moment of this story, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word hope if you believe that even broken relationships can be rebuilt with honesty and effort. Years later, when their daughter asked about the framed photo on the shelf, the one taken in a hospital room with tear-streaked smiles, they told her the truth in gentle pieces. They told her that she had arrived not just as a child, but as a mirror. She had forced two flawed adults to confront themselves, to choose courage over comfort. The memory of that day in the lawyer's office never fully faded. It remained a reminder of how close they had come to permanent loss. But instead of regret, it became gratitude. Because sometimes, life waits until the very edge of goodbye to reveal the miracle you almost walked away from.